Today we want to talk about the challenges of starting all over in a new garden. If you're new here, we started Root Design Company in 2015 when we lived together, back when we planned to be spinsters for life. What are men compared to rocks and mountains? I'm kidding. We both met our spouses in 2021 and got married in 2022. What was great for our love lives was not so great for our garden life. We are now starting all over in gardens of our own.
We have a lot of experience, but starting all over in a new garden had both of us feeling like total newbies. And why are we sharing this with you? I think maybe as a way to sort of confess our own, maybe sins, but to give a sense of camaraderie. If you're starting a new garden and feeling like you're floundering a bit, I would say that's pretty normal.
I recently heard somebody say that if you aren't failing 20% of the time, you probably aren't trying hard enough. So by that metric, we're giving it all we got.
First up, I'd like to talk about the fact that we both felt like we were chronically behind the entire spring season. It felt like we were getting things done after, a couple days or months or weeks after they should have gotten done instead of on time. For me, I think a lot of it was due to the fact that I didn't consider how much mental and even physical energy it would take to set up a garden. I think I just thought, well, I can go out and plant my stuff, so make my seed starting schedule and everything should just work out. It didn't work that way. Another thing that put me behind was weather related. We had a frost pretty late in May.
And my season started before I was ready. I did not finish my seeding schedule. Partly because, I've gardened for 8 years, but I've never actually done a seed starting schedule. And it looked really overwhelming to me. I think I thought that if I just put it off, maybe I don't have to do it. Well, it's still not done. I'm on my second sowing of a lot of things, and I still haven't done my seed starting schedule. I haven't finished it. I started it. And part of being an experienced gardener is you kind of know when stuff needs to get in the ground. But I did miss a few things. I did not cold stratify a bunch of spring crops that should have been cold stratified. And as a result, I don't have any ladies' mantle. A lot of them didn't even sprout. Another challenge that we had this spring was that we did not have the tools that we'd come to rely on. And that's, I think just mentally we thought, I have a shovel, I have a trowel, because we had those in the Ohio garden. But I only had so much room to bring stuff to Arkansas. And as a result, I was missing a lot of things, like landscape fabric, frost cloth, irrigation stuff. I just had to buy all new. Buckets. I was cutting flowers last night and didn't have a bucket to put flowers in. Trowels. I had to go buy a trowel. Just so many things that I got used to having. Like I don't have a studio to work out of, and I missed that a lot because, we would keep the studio cool. So when you picked something, you could put it in there, and it would stay nice and cool. I have nowhere to store the flowers that I've picked. It's all stuff that I think we kind of knew, but now that we're experiencing it, it's a little bit like, it's just starting all over again.
Well, I think a little bit with all of that, it felt like you got one thing figured out, and then there were about three other things you had to figure out, What I struggled with, I had a lot of the tools, but there were a few that were missing here and there. But the thing I struggled with was sometimes I needed two sets of tools because I'm not gardening where I'm living. I started all my seeds here at our house, and my garden is about 5 minutes away. So I'd end up needing something that was at the house when I was out at the garden already. For example, Sluggo Plus, the stuff we use to keep the slugs and things down. I recently saw some slug damage out at the garden. I thought, I need to bring that. And I kept forgetting it for like 3 or 4 times when I was going out to the garden. So it was hard for me to get in a rhythm of thinking, okay, what all do I need when I go to the garden?
I think that you could probably lean this up and get you a tool for both places if you use them at both places.
Yes.
I think one of the tools, though, that I miss the most is having a sister to give me a jump up out of it wedgie.
I miss that too.
It's having somebody to goad you on and be like, come on, get over it, get out in the garden. It's when you're used to that, it just feels really almost lonely to be out in the garden by yourself.
Right.
I don't even know what I'm doing.
Right.
It's better now that I've been doing it.
Well, and we both kind of have that in our husbands. I know I was dragging my feet to actually get started. Like I hadn't laid any paths or done anything in the garden. Like all last summer, I should have been doing stuff and I knew it, and I'd kind of, make a little squawk about it every once in a while.
Well, you were just married. You had a lot of personal changes too.
Right, that's true. But then I think one evening Morgan maybe had enough of listening to me complain about things, and we went out to the garden and he helped me lay my first path and we got it done, and then I felt a lot better after that. So
I don't have my sister, but I do have a very handy, helpful husband who helped me tremendously in the garden. I wouldn't have a garden if it wasn't for him. Myron.
Tribute.
My dear Myron. Gotta brag on him a little bit so they keep helping us.
A few more things that we didn't do was do our research or keep notes.
And those are sins. We knew better.
I have a few seeds that, I know how important it is to do research, because each seed often requires a little bit different conditions to get started well. And I had rhubarb and chives, and I'm not sure. There were a couple other things that I tried. I just kind of winged it. I wasn't sure what exactly they needed. They didn't sprout, not a one of them. We also didn't keep notes. We actually just discovered this when we were talking today, that neither of us did very well in keeping notes. We've preached that for years, but sometimes it's hard to actually do the things you preach. Yeah. I did take some pictures, so that will help. I've got a few reference points there, but that is one thing I do.
Yeah.
It's going to change for next year. I want to get a legit little garden diary and fill it up.
Show of hands, who thinks she's actually going to do it next year?
Hey, I used to
We always tell ourselves next year will be better. I know, you used to actually do it. I take it back. But I'm not so sure I'll do it. But go ahead.
I was very religious the first couple of years, but I think it's easier that the longer I go to get more lax thinking, oh, I know that. I'll remember that. It's easier to fall in that trap now than it was even in the beginning, I think.
And finally, I think we underestimated the resilience it takes to just start all over again. And most of that is mental resilience. We had a beautiful, well-established garden. In the spring, we just had to walk out and plant into it. We kind of had a well-oiled system going. And so it feels, after 8 years of fine-tuning that, it just feels like, starting all over again. That is a mental block. Right. I've had to just tell myself, look at the positive things in it, and just have a little grit, have a little determination, just get out there and do it.
And what's done this year will be there for next year. Something along with that, it was hard not having our well-established perennials, like our lilacs, our snowball bush, just ready, blooming, with no work done on our part. I did go back to the old garden a couple of times to get a few bucketfuls of all of those things. And my sister, who's still living in that area, was kind enough to take off a bunch of the peonies and save them in the fridge for us. Doing that made me realize how much having established flowers in the garden gives you a boost of creativity, and you can do this in the spring. They're there. It's almost like they're there cheering and clapping you on, saying, we're here. Everything else is going to come too. Just keep working. I loved the encouragement I got from the flowers in our old garden this spring.
Yeah. And we didn't have any of that this year.
Sorry.
If you would just look out at the garden, it would just be dirt.
Yeah.
Just nothing. So I think in conclusion, I would say that starting a new garden is a little bit like the noodle effect. I don't know if that's quite the right analogy here, but every single noodle is very important, and they're all intertwined, and they're connected. So if you have a good garden plan, but you don't have a garden to plant them into, your plan doesn't mean that much. That's what an established garden has. It's got irrigation, it's got infrastructure, it's got all of that good stuff. And I think that just kind of took me by surprise, was how much I had to do just to be able to get plants in the ground.
Yeah, because it's scheduling your plantings. It is getting the seeds started. It's having a map, have everything mapped out, like your irrigation system. It's having, there's just so much that
mulch and compost. Yeah.
Right. It depends on each other, and everything has to be timed well to do well. And so it can feel like a big plate full of spaghetti.
And I think also the personal changes in our lives, it was a lot to deal with. Like we both moved to new communities. I'm far away from my family. So we had a lot of personal stuff going on too. And I think that probably made it a little more difficult as well.
Right.
But it felt like there was just so many things that needed to be done at once when
Right.
we actually went to start our gardens, and some things had to slide because we also have, like, we have the YouTube channel. We've got other aspects of the business that we were trying to keep going as well. So I don't know. Like, it's not, gardens are forgiving and there's always next year.
Right.
But starting over was a bit harder. I think it surprised both of us with how hard it was. I think maybe our old garden made us kind of lazy or something. I don't know.
Right. Well, we just kind of, we were coasting more than anything, I think.
Yeah. Right.
And the thing is, I felt burned out a couple of times, and I just acknowledged it. And somehow, somewhere, I'm not sure, was it you or Morgan or who, just kind of prodded me along, and I'd get back up and keep going, you know? And now finally there's stuff starting to bloom. So I can already see some of the payoff of all that hard work and just keeping on even when I didn't feel like it.
And if gardening's taught me one thing, it's that just show up a little bit every day. And
Yes.
you know, I know that, but it still was hard to show up. But it's so gratifying just to be able to see the progress in the garden.
Right. I would say it's good to find someone to either bounce ideas off of, or maybe to give you a helping hand every once in a while, or just tell you could do it.
So if you are starting over in a garden, just take heart. It probably will not be the easiest thing, but you can do it. If we can, anybody can.
Yep. And if you're new, take heart. And if you're an old timer, take heart.
Just take heart. Today we want to talk about, Today we want to talk about, okay, I'm talking too fast. One more time. Today we want to talk about starting all over in a new garden. If you're new here, we started Root Design Company in 2015. And, oh shoot. This is a practice run, Loranda. A practice run. So, that's it. Okay, let's have a little shake it off.